Welcome everyone to the BOPTMN podcast. As 2022 is winding down, I've been reflecting on all of my guests that I've had on the podcast, and what amazing people I've had on. And I wanted to do a quick little synopsis on each one of them to thank them partially for even being a guest and taking this journey with me, and then also to kind of summarize what I've learned from all of them. It's pretty cool, this wealth of knowledge that I've had on here. I can't believe I've already captured this much, and I can't wait to find out where it goes. So, without further ado, let's start off with the first podcast, which is JT Jeff Tounge. JT literally started this journey off for me with podcasting, me joining him on his, and then him now being on mine. He's the only person that's been on twice, so we'll get more into depth with him when he comes up with the second one. But he literally started this journey of ultra running off for me. He started the ideas of fasting and challenging my body and thinking about all these different topics. He literally started this journey off. So I'm really thankful to him. Next up is my father. Podcast number 2 was with my dad, George Edward Curtis III. What a cool opportunity to sit down with your own father, right? I would recommend it to anyone out there. What a great excuse. I looking back, I feel like I'm such a better podcaster now than I was way back when. And I probably would have steered it in all kinds of different directions. And maybe him and I will sit down again. I would love that. So for obvious reasons, having my dad on is a cool opportunity. But my father, for those of you who don't know, was a Methodist minister for his career. And he's inspired so many people as a spiritual guidance, I think, as in his character, as a very positive person, a fun person, somebody that enjoys life, somebody that's very competitive, but able to kind of step back and, and have fun with the experience and stuff like that. And I feel really grateful to have him as such a great role model through my life. And I'm glad I get to share our little bit, even if it's just for me, to share that time with him. Next up is Kyle O'Connell. Kyle, I know through work, and Kyle's one of those guys that's super positive that you enjoy being around. You're looking forward to talking to. You never know what he's going to say. He's got a fun sense of humor. And I got to say that I was blown away that Kyle had actually he's the safety director at my work, and he's literally nationally recognized as one of the top safety directors in the country. But he came to my work with minimal experience in being a safety director. He literally talked his way into the position, bet on himself, and then put in the hard work and made it happen. And like I said, he's been an absolute success. And it's really cool to see that just being a nice person and being somebody that people like to be around, and just enjoying what you do, enjoying the people you're around, can lead to success. And I feel like that's where, if you watch the podcast, you're going to see that, like, literally his attitude spews through the whole thing. He's just a fun guy, enjoys life, and it makes everyone around him better. Next up, Sue O'Brien. Sue I knew through teaching. She was my daughter's teacher in elementary school. And then I also knew her through swimming, and we're our board of trustees through the pool together. Sue is somebody that I feel like has found her groove and just enjoys life. She knew her calling was teaching, and not only did she could have just rested on, like, yeah, I'm a teacher and I've got talent in this. I feel like Sue put in the work. You can tell that, like, how passionately she thought about teaching. I feel super lucky that my daughter had her as a teacher, and then not only that, like, she's also found in a similar way through life her groove, what she enjoys, her passions, what she likes doing. So I feel like she's put in as much work in her career as she's put in what her where she finds joy, and that's enough. You know what I mean? Like, that's where we all should be. We all should be at this point where we're finding things we love, and then and doing the things we love and pursuing those things. And skiing and running aren't exactly easy pursuits. She's also challenging her body, pushing her body, doing things that like long term will have long term benefits, but she's also found joy in those. And I don't know what a cool perspective to have. And next up, Dave O'Brien, who I also David Colter. Sorry, I misspoke. Sue O'Brien, David Colter. Dave is one of those people that you hope you're gonna run into him when you go into when you. So I know Dave from the pool. I hope every time I go to the pool that Dave's smiling face is there. Even if we just have a small interaction, maybe if it's just a wave, whatever, Dave's energy exudes from him. And a lot of people like talking about themselves. Dave is literally energetic about finding about you and what's going on with you. And he really sets an example, I think, of how interesting people are, how much more we can gain from each other and learning from each other. And there's a lot of benefit in that. And my little social hangups of like forgetting names and stuff like that. He's like, forget that. Just I forgot your name. What's your name again? And then let's have a conversation. What's going on with you? Like, so I just his joy and how that's connected to his business success is such a cool thing, and it's something we all could learn a lot from. After Dave was Danielle Johnson. Danielle is an elite runner. I don't know how else to put it. She's had she was a very successful high school runner into college, and now she's an extremely successful cross country coach. But when I talked to her, she'd only won one state championship. Now she's won two. But it was very interesting to see how running is still a challenge for her. Like it wasn't an easy pursuit, and there's a lot of ups and downs along the way, even for somebody that's that talented. And then I also kind of her perspective of so she's coaching boys and girls in cross country, and just getting through to your male athletes as a female coach and the challenges there and the respect. And even though she's an elite runner, there's still challenges there. Like you just don't jump into that role. And I think as a leader, she has found, her own voice. And I don't know, it's just really cool to see how how passionate she was and how dedicated to her students, which my daughter has her as a teacher, how dedicated she is to her students and how much she's she's found her passions and applied them. Similar to Sue in that way. They've kind of found their roles and what they do and what they love, and they seem to have found like this great place to be in life with the balance of challenges and enjoyment and being really good at what you do. And I think it comes probably from a position, a career of giving, right? That's why these people have found such a great spot in life, and we all could probably give more and try to help more out. And to me, I can see the positive benefits from both Sue and Danielle in you spend a life of helping people and how much reward there actually is in that. Maybe there isn't the financial reward that other careers would have, but there's absolutely an emotional, lifelong success reward. So something cool I've taken away from some of my teachers I've had on. Next up was JT on his second time being on the podcast. The first time he was on, we kind of talked in general about a lot of things. We kind of honed in more, I think, on the second one on kind of our pursuits. Both are pursuing, trying to run 100 miles. And JT part of his perspective is just really controlling what we can control and letting what you can't control go. And I think it clearly applies to his business success and his running success. He pushes me JT comes at things. Him and I are both attacking the same problem, and I'm always amazed that he has a different approach to how to get to the same thing I'm trying to do. We're starting it. We're at similar places. We're both trying to get to the same place, and he's going at this way, and I'm going at that way. And if you kind of picture that visually, right, like a circle, we're both coming at trying to get to this solution. But when him and I kind of combine our ideas and come together, we tend to find the straight line, the shortest distance. Um, I always enjoy talking to JT. He's one of the easiest people I can talk to. Him and I, like I said, are so similar and so different, which I think makes us a cool combination. So that another great podcast. So we're up to podcast 8, which is Brian Mousally. Um, Brian is somebody. So I just want to say, podcast wise, every guest up to this point. Well, I shouldn't say that. I guess Danielle I didn't really know very well, but it was kind of, for me, it felt like more branching out into somebody I really didn't know. I really didn't know much about at all. We had a brief conversation at a part-time job I talked to years ago and thought he's an interesting guy. That was kind of the limit of what I knew of Brian. Um, we got into the podcast, and and I had found out in kind of researching him that he had done Spartan Ultra races, which I really didn't know much about Spartan races, let alone ultra races. So it's an obstacle race at an ultra running distance. Um, Him talking about how challenging that was, how hard the effort he had to do to get into that, to get to that level, and then, and what that kind of means to your confidence, your who you are. It's a defining moment, and and it was really cool to talk to him about that, and then also what an easy, fun going person he is. Um, really easy to talk to, very energetic, just somebody. uh, you know, I I I just got to say briefly, I ran into him. I'm at we're coming out of Lowe's parking lot, right? Coming around the corner, and he's coming out of the store, and I see him, and I just literally smile on my face, like, hey, there's Brian. Like him and I haven't stayed in touch. A little bit here and there, like, and it just makes me smile knowing somebody else. And there's this connection now through this podcast. But I'm like, I gotta have you on again. And I totally want to have Brian on again because it was such a good little conversation, and who knows where that conversation will go from there. And I know Brian was very interested in kind of like, let's explore other things. And I really do enjoy people that are like, let's you and I, let's talk something out and see if we can come to something, some kind of solution. And I appreciate that in Brian. Alex Layman was next. Alex, I found through, so my daughter's had a teacher who was somebody I really wanted to have on, who ended up having to move, and it just didn't work out. And this teacher was like, I know somebody else that would be a good guest. And how lucky I was that, and the connection there was through CrossFit. Um, CrossFit is something that Alex is into, and he definitely some pursuits of physical fitness that he's into, which was the connection and something I was interested in. But the part of that podcast that I wasn't, I guess I was pleasantly surprised by is what a hero he is walking among us. Um, and what do I mean by that? He's an EMT, he's a firefighter, he's passionate about what he does. He really intellectually tries to challenge himself to be better at both those jobs. His pursuit in CrossFit is absolutely part of what makes him better at his positions. But also how humble of a guy he is. Like, I feel like if I was saving lives, I want to tell the world, like, yeah, I did this, I do this. Think of all the lives I say. That I feel like that's me. Like, not that I'm a braggadocious kind of person. I don't think, but I've I've saved a life. Um, and literally, it's one of the fondest memories. Like, what a cool memory of saving this infant that I happened to catch before it hit its head on the concrete, right? Alex is somebody that does this stuff day in, day out. And you almost have to pry it out of him because it's the job, it's what he does. And like, that's what you want in your heroes, right? And it was really cool to hear him talk about, life saving and what that's like. So thank you, Alex. Next up was Ian Jones. And Ian is somebody that, like, just in passing, small talk at the pool. Another person I met through swimming, right? Ian's not the most talented swimmer. He's not, like he just seems like a nice guy, right? But we never really talked very much. And I found out he had done an Ironman or was about to do an Ironman, and no, he had finished an Ironman, and I was like, oh, there's a connection, right? Like anybody that's doing these types of pursuits physically, like I find their minds so interesting. I love watching videos, people talking about this. And this is a big part of what inspires this podcast is just, what what it is that motivates people to do these things, these hard pursuits, right? And so that was, I'm kind of going into blind with Ian, and the thing that just exudes from Ian is his just joy of these pursuits. And it's so different than me, right? Swimming is a challenge. I get in and I grind. Cycling is more of a challenge. It's something there's parts I enjoy about it, but it's physical work. Running is hard for me. Like I know I'm grinding, and I think I get a lot of benefits from doing something hard and pushing myself through hard. You wouldn't know it to talk to Ian. He just enjoys the crap out of what he's doing. And his energy is infectious. He's just a happy guy. And once again, it seems to be a common theme. And I feel like I'm a broken record talking about this, but like doing hard things definitely has positive benefits. But what I learned from Ian is just because it's hard doesn't mean it doesn't have to be fun too. And you still get those positive benefits. And he's doing what he loves. He's chasing his passion. And I can't wait to talk to him. He's another one like Dave. I look forward to seeing him at the pool. It's just cool. Like, so these two guys that if I go on certain days to the pool, chances are I'm gonna run into the two of them, and it's like two rays of sunshine. Like how do you have a bad day when your day starts off running into those two guys? So that's pretty cool. Next up, Hayden Maples. Hayden was just by chance happened to running into him on YouTube he's a YouTuber. He has a channel of physical fitness and ultra running and stuff like that. But then he also does kind of more fun challenges and fun videos. So he has a combination of both. And it's kind of where the light bulb went off for me on kind of originally I started this podcast thinking I want to talk to local people. But there is a limit, right? And the challenges of kind of getting people and scheduling and it was kind of like I'm like, where do I go? I was kind of running out of directions. I'm not the most social person. This is part of this podcast is a way of me challenging myself to be a more social person, to be more out there. And I had the idea. I'm like, let's reach out to Hayden. I really enjoy his channel, and I totally recommend you guys checking out, whether you're looking for fitness kinds of stuff or you're looking for just a fun channel to follow. Hayden's both. So I'm like, I'm gonna reach out to this YouTuber, and never expecting him to ever be willing to do this. And he got right back to me. He's like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And like I said, Hayden is, he's physically like challenging himself to do some pretty impressive running stuff. And he's very humble. If you watch his podcast, like literally, I think the first thing he says on the podcast is like, I don't know what I'm gonna have to add to this. But of all the people, like there's people I follow on Instagram, he posts some of the most interesting, mentally challenging stuff of anybody I've seen out there. He's got a great sense of humor, great fun. Like I would love to hang out with Hayden. I mean, if we weren't, hundreds and hundreds of miles away, I would definitely be like trying to pick his brain, like trying to be around him because he seems like a really fun guy and just enjoys life. And once again, that's part of the reoccurring theme I can't help but point out is just all these people that are pursuing hard things and challenging themselves tend to have this joy in life. And I don't think that's a coincidence. So Chase, I know Chase through Last Man Standing, which is an ultra running race where you go until there's one person left. Chase placed ahead of me in that race. Was that was a race for me, was the first time I was in a race where I'm looking around, I'm like, there's a lot of elite runners. And um, Chase was at the top of the pack. You look at Chase, he's a specimen as far as running, looks go. And, his stride, the way he was just machine like in his running. And I wanted to talk to him about, that experience, not knowing that he was about to do the Moab 240-mile race weeks later. And, if anything, that ultra run where I'm competing against him, where I thought I might be competing against him, come to find out that was kind of more of a practice run for him. And Chase is a really interesting guy, really nice guy, very humble for a younger guy who's such at such an elite level already, and really could go far in this sport. And very well, I expect to see great things out of him. He's very humble. Um, just enjoying the journey that life's taken him on, and looking back, I got no problems with the path that's led me to here today. But I wonder what I could have done if I found ultra running sooner, and probably wouldn't be much better. But Chase is somebody that's found it early, and it'll be exciting to watch him in his running career and where it ends up. And I really appreciate him being on. Just as a side, as a quick side, I do on my podcast, I have race companions, which I review different races that I've done or other people have done. And I did a quick review with Nick Batch and Chase on the Moab 240, which just what a cool thing to kind of learn about what that's like running around the Moab desert for 240 miles. Okay. So next up after Chase was Jason Geroux. Jason, like Chase, I met through Last Man Standing race. Jason, another one of those elite runners. But even before the race, JT had found him on Instagram, and he had given us, we kind of asked some advice from him. JT had asked some and has some really good insight. So I kind of knew going in that, like, this is a guy that is willing to help other runners out, which is a theme across the running world, I find. Um, but I thought that was kind of cool. And then he gave us one of our best moments during the race, kind of some encouragement in the middle of the race when I know he was probably not at his best. And since then, I follow him on Instagram. He's a great follow. Man, if you want to watch somebody that's pushing their body and challenging themselves and not really looking for, he's not out there for glory. He doesn't need you. He doesn't need any, I really feel like he doesn't need anybody to say you're doing a good job, Jason. He's so in his own mind and locked in, like, this is what I want. These are my goals, and I'm putting the work to achieve them. And it's really cool to see him. I would say Jason, more than anybody, outwardly, if you look at his images, even the way he presents himself as the main Viking, right? He's kind of got this almost an aura to him of like this tough, hard guy. But man, you couldn't be more wrong. I mean, honestly, a nicer guy you couldn't find, just willing to talk and share, and once again enjoys what he's doing. And I really, we can't judge books by covers, and I think his cover is almost meant to fake you out, and I really appreciate the relationship him and I kind of have now. Like, he makes me feel soft. He makes me realize that, like, the story of somebody else is outworking me, and that's why I'm putting in the work. Well, I don't have to actually like imagine that person, because that person is Jason. And if I ever want to turn to somebody like that's really put in the work, I look at Jason. It's like, damn, I'm not doing enough to be better, to reach my goals. So after that, what's Rob's last name? Race Companions, playlist, full podcast season 2, Rob. Next up, podcast number 14, Rob Hale. Rob I met through Hayden. Hayden actually had gone down which Hayden and Rob met through YouTube, I believe. Rob's a YouTuber, and he had done an Ironman, and Hayden had gone on and like done part of an Ironman workout with him. I'm like, let's find somebody that there's a commonality right there. Let's see if he'll be on. And once again, didn't really expect a YouTuber to be willing to come on and have this conversation with me, and he was more than happy to. Rob, I gotta say, when you look at Rob, he doesn't look like an somebody that would be an Iron Man, and that's no shade on him whatsoever. He's a bigger guy, not saying just more muscular, bigger guy, right? Not the thin kind of prototypical distance athlete, right? And to be honest with you, I'm really impressed with. I mean, just going into the podcast and talking to him about the challenges and pushing through and overcoming and just not giving up kind of attitude, which is really cool to see. But the other thing, which I got to point out, which I didn't really know then, because I just kind of, through Hayden, I'd kind of just found Rob and asked him to be on and didn't know him a lot. But since then, I've been following him on Instagram for the past few months. And the one thing I got to say is, I know I struggle. Like, I am 9 months away from my race right now, right? And trying to focus that long, that's a challenge, right? And as you get closer to your race, it's easier to kind of like really focus in and lock in. And I love that time. And then the race ends, and you've got this little bit of lull. Your body's recovering or whatever, and getting back into the groove and the challenge of that. And seeing Rob finish his Ironman, and then he took the required time for his body to heal and then got right back into it and puts in the work. Like, it's really impressive to see how much work he puts in. And I didn't know at the time that he was, you could see by what, obviously you don't just complete an Ironman. So it's obviously he did put in the work, but he really puts in the work and not just swimming, biking, running, but with cross training. And he, really impressive guy. And another one of those people I like to see on Instagram, like I said with Jason, like he's putting in the work, and it's very inspiring for me. And I love having these new connections through this podcast. After Rob was Joe Tounge. Joe is somebody that, like, once again, another super positive vibe, keeps himself in shape, was looking forward to talking about his fitness and what he does, because we've had little conversations for years at the beach about this stuff. We never got into any of that for the most part, or just touched on it briefly, because his path in the music industry was so interesting. Just like ultra running, like the Ironman, like these different pursuits that these guests have been doing, he took on a challenge. Like Kyle, he bet on himself. He took a chance, went out, and his infectious vibe, his energy, his positiveness is, I believe, a big part of where his success came from. And Joe is somebody, him and I, so a fun thing we do with the kids and nieces and nephews, and that when we're at the beach, which he's usually there a similar week that we are, Foursquare is a game that our family loves playing on the beach. We set it up, and it ends up being this huge competition. Well, Joe and I, in that game, and Bocce, which is another one we play at the beach a lot, we endlessly talk trash to each other. I don't know how it started. It just started and developed in our relationship, and we talk a lot of trash. And Joe brings up that he feels like talking trash is the fifth love language. And I'll let that sink in for a second, right? And his perspective on that was so cool. That, honestly, I mean, when you think about it, think about somebody that you're willing to talk trash to. Like, you're willing to say, whatever it is, sports, or you're playing a game of chess, and whatever, you're talking trash. You don't do that with somebody you're not comfortable with. And and Joe even talks about that, like when he'll do it intentionally, and then all of a sudden somebody will talk back to him, will give it back to him, and he's like, we're there. Like it's a barometer for the level of comfort between of the relationship. And he's so right, right? Like, and it's something that's, when you think about that little thing, like talking trash and how deep of a level he thought of that, then it's quite clear to see like how, like I can't wait to talk to him more about where his mind goes on other things, because he's such a deep introspective thinker. Um, and that one was cool because JT was also on the podcast co-hosting me with that one. JT and Joe are brothers; they're my cousins. It was cool to see that perspective, and JT obviously has a unique perspective watching Joe's development through the years. Next up was Quinton Porter. Quinton, another cousin of mine, but like one of those things where it's like, I have a cousin who played in the NFL. I'm How cool is that? And Quinn is that cousin. But the thing that stands out, which I was kind of aware of, but it was great to hear his perspective and his thoughts on it and where he's come, is, getting to the NFL, playing in the NFL. What a dream come true! It's something that a lot of young boys dream of, right? Or whatever that level is, the peak of whatever thing you're pursuing, right? The highest high levels. He made it there. And I think a lot of us like to see the results. Like, I've completed an Ironman. This person's completed this ultra. This person's done this. This person's done that. We can look at the achievement and we forget all the work that goes into it. And, although he has physical talents and he was gifted in a certain way, that doesn't excuse the hard work. Like how much effort had to go in to make that achievement, to get to that level. And I think it's a great perspective to try to keep, it's easy to look at somebody and be jealous or think, I could have done that. But to remind ourselves, man, that person must have challenged themselves to get there. Like, what did go into that? What was the path to get there? And this podcast is my way of kind of asking those questions, and it's really cool to see his path, and then going through life challenges, and then in the end coming out with this, how meditation and stuff like that, like, and thinking about things, and diving into ourselves can have us in the end being a better version of ourselves. Next up is Luke Porter. Luke is Quinton's brother. Luke's another cousin of mine. And I feel so lucky to have this family of amazing people, and in the future I plan to have more on. But Luke is, played football at a very high level, but then got into the police force. And, police sometimes get a hard rap in the media and stuff like that, and you never see all the good things they do. But you talk to Luke, and I can't imagine anybody else coming away with a different perspective. Like, that's the guy I want protecting us. That's the guy I want. I want that guy that thinks like that to be behind a gun, behind a shield, right? He's just physically similar to Jason, who I talked about, physically an imposing guy, but couldn't be a nicer person. And, really takes it all to heart. Like, there, it isn't just, it's just so much more than just protect and serve. And it was great to have his perspective. It was great to catch up with him. Just one of the nicest guys out there. And I'm truly blessed to have him as a cousin. Thank you, Luke. All right, next up, Nate McKnight, my 18th podcast. Nate's a guy, I got to admit, that I never would have thought I'd have on the podcast. I didn't see Nate as somebody that challenged himself physically. That was kind of, on a path, an unhealthy path. I don't even know if that's right, but the thing I didn't notice was, or I should have made this connection, was I was on that path. I had an unhealthy path. I let myself get out of shape. I let myself get overweight. I let it go. And Nate was on just that path just a few years after me. I should have seen that connection. But to see him transform and to see the effort that he put in to turn his body around, to turn literally his life around, is so inspiring. It's humbling to me, like, to not judge people, because if Nate can do it, you can do it, right? I mean, like, I didn't see him as somebody. I didn't see Nate as a person that had the dig deep, and I didn't. It's completely unfair for me to kind of even say this because I didn't know him well enough. I didn't, But isn't that all what we do to everybody we meet? We only know somebody as well as our little conversations when we make up our mind about people. And I want to say I definitely, for whatever reason, made up my mind differently about Nate than what he truly was. And he totally crushed any thoughts I had on who he was or physically what he was capable of doing out of the park. He's already right on the verge of surpassing anything I've ever done a marathon speed wise. And he's a year into it. He's he's really so inspiring, and I don't know what else to say about just completely inspiring, and we all should not judge people and look to inspire more people. So thank you, Nate. And last up, my 19th podcast, which I can't believe I'm at. I want to say before I get into the 19th, I can't believe I've had 19 podcasts. Um, yeah, I mean, there was a time, I think, yeah, it's surprising to have this number. Thank you all for being on, and thank you for joining me. Be willing to take this risk with me, putting yourself out there. So my 19th podcast, my daughter Logan. Logan is somebody I see very much like me in that we're fine with just being quiet and listening and processing, um, taking in the information, and just sharing with the people that are in my little close knit group, right? And I would challenge Logan to try to break out of that more. And actually, I've seen her breaking out of that more. But there's a side of Logan that not many get to see, just like I feel like there's a side of me that not many get to see. And Logan and I had this amazing conversation. She's my daughter, so obviously I'm so close to the flame that I can't really step back and look at it, to see if it'd be interesting for all of you. But what I've heard from responses, um, it's pretty cool that other people are enjoying this in a way that I did too. Logan is somebody I think is very compassionate and thinks about other people on such a deep level that it challenges me to be better at that. Um, she's very willing to like have her ideas challenged, which I gotta say, of all these things, everything I've learned is one of probably my biggest weaknesses. I think I want that, but I put up. I don't present that. Logan presents that. Logan embodies that. Like, I've got a strong, well thought out perspective, and here it is. But let me take in yours. Let me learn from yours. My perspective can be better. Change my perspective. I think we all, as a society, could be better at that. And it's funny how my daughter is challenging me indirectly to be a better person and to be better. Um, so there's my year, little over a year in podcasting, 19 episodes. Such a great journey. Thank you all for being on. Thank you for listening. If you've listened, um, I have exciting guests coming up. I'm really excited about. I can't wait to see where this journey takes. Um, it's been fun. I'm learning a lot. Uh, yeah. So, and I just want to speak at the end. I called this Be Optimum, which is kind of I'm challenging myself to be the best, most optimal version of myself for long term health, for long term physical and mental health, for being my best self now, it's an unachievable goal, right? We're never going to be optimal. We might hit points where something's really right, and working well, but across the board, we're never optimal. And what is optimal? That's completely up to debate. Um, but I think it's something we all should be doing, right? I think we all should be thinking that way. Like, how can I be better today? How can I take this situation to make it better? I just did something that I'm not proud of. How could I be better in that moment? I think if we're all thinking along those lines, and I gotta say, if there's one overall, so like let's do some overall occurring themes. Some really positive people I've had on that put out more good. Like if you want to talk karma, I have a list of people that are just exuding positive karma that have been on this podcast. And I'm drawn to those people. I think we're all drawn to those people. So shouldn't we all be thriving to be one of those people? Um, Thank you all for joining. Um, I guess that's it. And hopefully next year will be an even more of a success. Have a great day, everyone. Peace.